Amid rising tensions in the Middle East, Iran's president and foreign minister die in a helicopter crash. What impact will their deaths have on the war-torn region? The International Criminal Court seeks arrests of both Hamas and Israeli leaders. We'll bring you the details. In the New York criminal trial against former President Trump, Michael Cohen's cross-examination is winding down. NTD's legal correspondent is at the courthouse at the latest. The man who wants Fulton County DA Fani Willis's job says she needs to go now before tomorrow's Georgia primary. We'll tell you why the Democratic challenger says she needs to resign. Slumping sales are forcing Target to hit the mark on inflation by slashing prices. We'll let you know which items and brands will be subject to discounts as the retail giant tries to attract more shoppers. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. An update on the death of Iran's president and foreign minister. NTD's Jack Bradley is at the State Department with the U.S. response. Jack, what's the latest on this?
Good afternoon, Chris. Well, we know that the U.S. is now expressing its condolences for the death of President Ebrahim Raisi, as well as noting his history of human rights abuses. Now, Raisi, along with the foreign minister of Iran, and 6 others, officials and bodyguards, were killed when a helicopter crash went down. Now, the cause of the crash is still unknown, but here's State Department spokesman Matthew Miller on this.
We have been quite clear that Ebrahim Raisi was a brutal participant in the repression of the Iranian people for nearly 4 decades. He was involved in numerous horrific human rights abuses, including playing a key role in the extrajudicial killing of thousands of political prisoners in 1988. Some of the worst human rights abuses occurred during his tenure as president, especially the human rights abuses against the women and girls of Iran. That said, we regret any loss of life. We don't want to see anyone die in a helicopter crash. But that doesn't change the reality of his record, both as a judge and as the president of Iran, the fact that he has blood on his hands.
Now, in a separate statement, we heard from Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, saying that they're continuing to analyze the situation. They haven't determined a cause of the accident, and it doesn't pose any broader regional security impacts at this point in time. Now, Raisi, the president who just passed away, he was 63 years old, and he was second in command in Iran, behind the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, Khamenei, he is 85. He has the ultimate say on foreign policy and nuclear programs there. He expressed his condolences for the death of Raisi, but saying that it would not disrupt state affairs. The vice president, Mohammad Mokhber, is taking Raisi's place for the time being. 50 days need to pass by. Within 50 days, there needs to be a new election to hold to select the new president. But experts have warned that elections in Iran are very much skewed and are not reliable, as the supreme leader can go ahead and his cabinet, which are appointed, can go ahead and reject or accept a new president who is elected. Now, many other world leaders also expressed their condolences, including the leaders in China, Russia, Iraq, India, Syria, many others, as well as the terrorist organizations in the Middle East that are Iran-backed, like Hezbollah, Hamas, and as well as the Houthi rebels. This blow to the Iranian regime comes just a month after Iran attacked Israel for the first time ever directly with a missile bombardment. But it was ultimately failed to produce any serious damage in Israel. Chris, back to you.
Jack Bradley, thank you. Staying in the Middle East, Raisi was known to be a hardliner, follower of the mullah's regime, and brutally repressed Iranian protesters in 2022. Celebrations erupted after his death on Sunday. NTD's France correspondent David Vivez speaks with an Iranian dissident who provides some insight on the impact of Raisi's death and the situation in the country.
Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi was known as a follower of the hardline policies of Iran's mullah regime. Raisi's death was welcomed with mixed feelings abroad. While the governments of Russia and Turkey mourned the Iranian president's death, dissidents in Germany and the UK came out to celebrate. Shen Yun, spokesman of the Iranian Renaissance movement, says there are reasons behind this. Raisi's role in suppressing nationwide protests, which occurred in 2022 after a 22-year-old woman died in police custody after being detained for not wearing a hijab, showed the nature of his leadership, Nejad says.
The highlight of what happened during his presidency, which was the uprising in Iran 1.5 years ago, and the brutal suppression and mass murder of several hundreds of Iranians, for sure tens of them under age of 18. Law enforcement was under internal ministry, and internal minister was appointed by him, so he was in charge and responsible for all of those bloods, torture, and suppression and oppression that people faced during those months.
Following the 2018 U.S. sanctions regarding the regime's nuclear agenda, Iranian society has been impoverished, while the regime has been undermined by reports of corruption cases. In this complicated context, sanctions imposed during Trump's presidency successfully kept the regime at bay from a more confrontational line both within the country and in its foreign policies, Nejad says.
The sanction which was applied and taken seriously during the presidency of President Trump really gave a very hard time to the regime. Although people go under pressure as well, at least it has some consequences which in long run could be beneficial for Iran and Iranian nation to get rid of the current regime.
David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
For more on this, we go now to David Wormser. He's a Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy. David, thank you for joining us. Now, in Iran, the president doesn't have as much power as the religious leader Ali Khamenei, who they call the supreme leader there. Ali is already 85 years old this year, and Raisi was considered a likely successor. Iran's first vice president will take over as interim president. Tell us about who Raisi was and who the interim president, Mohammad Mokhbar, is.
Yes. Now, first of all, you're absolutely right. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, is the one who really sets policy, but he chooses essentially his president, even though ostensibly he's elected, to set the tone for what they're going to do. It's all hard line, but the question is sometimes they're more manipulative of the West and sometimes more in your face. Raisi represented a more in your face strategy. The likely successor to Ali Khamenei, who's 88, or actually maybe more than that, was Raisi, but without Raisi there, it could be Khamenei's son, Mujtaba Khamenei. So there could be some internal politics that are very nasty going on around this. Who was Raisi? Raisi was considered by the Iranian people the butcher of Tehran. He was responsible for 30 or more thousand people being executed. He seemed to relish sentencing people to death in mass killings. Truly a grisly figure, a sadistic figure. I'm rather shocked the United States expressed its condolences. We didn't express our condolences over the death of Pol Pot, of Stalin, of Jim Jones, or Charles Manson. So we shouldn't express our condolences over this man. He is in that league. So that's roughly who the man was. As far as policy goes, Iran may potentially, it's facing a grave internal crisis because of this, and it may want to shut down external threats for a week or two or three. So we should be prepared for highly manipulative initiatives by the government to signal moderation, but it's not real moderation. So,
okay, thank you for that, David. Now, since the 1979 hostage crisis, Iran has had no formal relations with the U.S. I mean, talks between the two countries often occur in third-party nations. Last week, senior American and Iranian officials did reportedly discuss the ongoing conflict and how Iran could control its proxy forces. The world is also worried about Iran's potential to develop nuclear weapons. How is this helicopter crash going to impact Iran's relationship with the U.S.?
Yeah, well, the United States operates under a paradigm that it needs to come to terms with the Iranian regime. We can't remove the Iranian regime. They're too dangerous. So we have to essentially come to some sort of a strategic arrangement with them, which involves conceding strategic interests to Iran. That's this administration. It isn't the previous administration's point of view, but it is this one. So nothing that has been done by Iran in the last year, two, three, whether it's the mass slaughter of their own people, the suppression, the attacking of American forces in the region, the attack on Israel through its proxies, the escalation by shutting down international sea lanes through Yemen, through the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb and the Suez Canal. None of this has seemed to move the administration from its paradigm that you have to come to terms strategically with Iran to calm the region down. So I don't see that changing. What I do see is that the Iranian regime for the next few weeks is going to feel scared. It's going to feel scared of its own people rising up at a moment of transition. So it will want to shut down foreign threats. It will want to shut down Israel from going into Lebanon to take on Hezbollah. It will want to shut down Israel from completing the job in Gaza. So I would expect some reaching out by the Iranian regime to try to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel and push Israel to back off, which the Iranian regime needs right now. I don't think the Israelis are going to be in a mood to listen to that, but it's quite possible the United States will.
And Raisi's death comes during a critical period for Iran's internal affairs in the Middle East region as a whole, like we're talking about. Rafah is on edge right now. Iranian proxies in Lebanon are involved in border skirmishes with Israel in the north of Israel, and Houthi rebels are still attacking ships in the Mediterranean. How will Raisi's death impact the different powers in the Middle East?
In terms of actual policy, not at all. I mean, the Iranian regime is one of the most manipulative that have ever walked the face of the earth. They truly are the inheritor of Sherazade, the 1001 Night story, where the lady Sherazade manipulates through stories the soul of the king who's about to execute her, to the point where she takes control of his soul. That is the strategy of Iran. It has been since 1979. There are times when they think that a little bit of moderation to get control of us works, and sometimes they're in your face. I think the Iranian regime over the last 2-3 years has been more in a phase of in your face. You could maybe see a little bit of a shift there. These are small tactical shifts. The basic point of the Iranian regime is to launch a global Islamic revolution that destroys the West, and that won't change.
All right, David Wormser, thank you so much for your time today. And the International Criminal Court seeking arrests of both Hamas and Israeli leaders. Chief Prosecutor Karim A. Khan today said authorities are on both sides of the conflict have committed war crimes and crimes against humanity, prompting a response from the U.S. Department of State. NTD's Fiona G. has more.
The ICC arrest warrants would target Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and 2 other commanding officials, as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant. The U.S. Department of State condemned the move.
The United States fundamentally rejects the announcement today from the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court that he is applying for arrest warrants for senior Israeli officials together with warrants for Hamas terrorists. There should be no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Furthermore, the United States has been clear since well before the current conflict that the ICC has no jurisdiction over this matter.
The court accuses Hamas of crimes against humanity, including extermination, murder, taking hostages, rape, and torture, among others. It accuses the Israeli government of war crimes, including starving civilians, causing great suffering, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, among other war crimes. Judges must now decide whether to approve Khan's request.
If they don't issue any warrants, then that's an end of it. If they do issue the warrants, then those named in the warrants will either have to surrender or be surrendered to the court, or they'll have to be careful where they travel.
Israeli officials have condemned the request for arrests.
Branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism. It will also be the first time that a democratic country fighting for its life according to the rules of war is itself accused of war crimes.
Meanwhile, Hamas has also denounced the ICC's decision, accusing them of trying to, quote, equate the victim with the executioner. They also called on the ICC to arrest more Israeli leaders. Fiona G., NTD News.
And turning to Trump's so-called hush money trial, after the lunch break, Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen returned to the stand for a second round of questioning by the prosecution. He restated claims he made in previous testimony about Trump's involvement in the hush money payment. He also said the payment to Stormy Daniels was illegal. Joining us live is NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards for more details. Arlene, we've heard testimony from previous witnesses as well as Cohen that the non-disclosure agreement signed by Stormy Daniels was legal. Why is he now saying it's illegal?
Well, he wasn't really asked directly to explain why he thinks it's illegal. The prosecution asked him more about what happened in 2018 when he pleaded guilty to a campaign violation. And at that time, he said that he had donated this $130,000 to help the Trump campaign, and that he lied about it to the commission. And that he also said that he was actually doing it at Trump's direction to influence the campaign. So today, when they spoke to him about this, the judge told the jury to disregard this testimony about the campaign violation because Trump's not being charged with that. But the jury has already heard it, and if they believe that he actually reimbursed Cohen that $130,000, they may very well likely believe that Trump illegally influenced the campaign.
And Arlene, Trump's team brought out on cross-examination that Cohen was getting monthly payments from 6 other clients during the same time he was Trump's personal attorney. This was to show the jury how retainer agreements work and that Cohen likely had a retainer agreement with Trump. How did the prosecution handle this testimony?
So this goes back to Cohen's earlier testimony where he said that he wrote retainer agreement on his invoices because he was told by Alan Weisselberg to just put retainer agreement on them, even though they were reimbursement for this $130,000 plus other fees. So he told the jury today that that money actually was this reimbursement and that he spoke to Trump about it, and Trump had confirmed it and told him to go ahead and make the payment. Now, when we talk about what happened in the White House, he said that he was not Trump's personal attorney, that he didn't do work for Trump, but it was brought out on cross-examination that he did in fact become Trump's personal attorney while he was in the White House in 2017, and that Cohen did do legal work for him at that time. Also, we talk about these other 6 clients that he had at the same time. He was actually getting monthly payments of thousands of dollars from those clients, even though he didn't meet with them very often. So this testimony about not really working for Trump doesn't really work according to the defense, because even though he may not have seen Trump that often and he was still getting paid this $35,000, it means that it was probably a retainer agreement. Now, the prosecution again came back and had Cohen testify that he wasn't providing any legal services to Trump and that all the money that he was receiving was part of this reimbursement, and that any work that he did do for Trump or his family, he said that he wasn't really expecting to get paid. Back to you.
All right, Arlene, thank you for breaking that down for us. And outside the court, Trump's allies showed up in support of the former president, but protesters too gathered around and made their voices heard. The protesters shouted down the former president's allies. Those supporters included former Trump advisor Kash Patel, former New York Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson, Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde, Illinois Congresswoman Mary Miller, and former Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones. Here's South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson.
As the chief prosecutor for the state of South Carolina, I wanted this country to understand that prosecutors around the country are calling this sham trial exactly what it is, a sham trial. What we're seeing today is the prosecution of a person because of who he is, not what he is alleged to do.
In another Trump court case, a challenger for embattled Fulton County DA Fani Willis's job says it's time for her to step aside. Democrat Christian Wise Smith made the announcement during a press conference today. The attorney and author cites the alleged misuse of federal monies by Willis for a youth program as one of the reasons she needs to quit her post.
In light of potential prosecution and disbarment, I respectfully ask Fani Willis to resign, effective immediately.
Smith ran unsuccessfully against Willis 4 years ago. Willis is leading the prosecution of Trump in a 2020 election interference case. His comments come one day before Georgia voters head to the polls for primaries on Tuesday. And when we come back, slumping sales are forcing Target to counter inflation by slashing prices. How many items will have their prices reduced as the retail giant tries to attract more shoppers? That and more after the break. And
there is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind,
Would you really like it?
I hope so, yeah. I know this road is there for me. There is a long way.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this road is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free. Take me down to the river and wash me.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити. और बच्चों को भूख से मरने से रोक सकते हैं.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani
потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Welcome back. Almost 2 months after its collision with a Baltimore bridge, the trapped cargo ship Dali is being refloated. Here's more in NTD's Business Matters. Unified Command says the ship will be hauled from the wreckage site and moved 2.5 miles to Baltimore Marine Terminal. The port could be open by the end of the month. In the early hours of March 26th, the Dali lost power and veered off course, slamming into the bridge and triggering the collapse. 6 workers on the bridge were killed. A preliminary investigation found the Dali had a pair of electrical failures minutes before the collision. Dali's 21-member crew have been confined to the ship since the crash. It's unclear what will happen to them once the ship is moved. And Target plans to slash prices on 5,000 frequently bought products by summertime to attract inflation-wary shoppers. This ranges from milk and diapers to butter and laundry detergent. The change affects both name brands and house brands. Store executives say prices will vary depending on the city. The cuts for Target are an attempt to turn sales around. Other major retailers, including IKEA and Aldi's, have been reducing prices in recent months to re-attract consumers to brick-and-mortar stores. And gold prices have reached a record high, hitting nearly $2,500 per ounce in this session. This was fueled by recent economic data boosting bets for interest rate cuts by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Traders are estimating that borrowing costs could be reduced as early as September. The reason this would bring the value of gold up is because gold doesn't incur interest. U.S. gold futures gained a bit too. Spot silver followed suit and hit an 11-year high. Unlike gold, though, silver is considered an industrial commodity since it can be used in products such as solar panels. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. We will have more stories from the U.S. and around the world. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.